The key was still warm in my hand when I heard the laughter coming from my own dining room. I wasn't supposed to be home. According to my husband Marcus, I was supposed to be 3 states away, attending my best friend's wedding in Denver. According to the itinerary he'd helped me plan, I should have been toasting the bride right about now, not standing in my own foyer with my heart hammering against my ribs. But life has a twisted sense of humor, doesn't it? The bride got food poisoning. The wedding was postponed, and here I was, back in my own house 12 hours early, listening to my husband's voice mixing with someone else's in the most intimate way possible. The someone else was my sister Riley. I recognized her laugh immediately, that high musical sound that had charmed everyone since we were kids. The same laugh that had stolen my high school boyfriend. The same laugh that had somehow convinced our parents she deserved the bigger bedroom, the better car, the college fund that was supposed to be split between us. And now, apparently, my husband. I should have stormed in there. I should have screamed. I should have thrown something expensive and breakable. Instead, I found myself moving like a ghost through my own home, my bare feet silent on the hardwood floors I'd picked out, toward the dining room where my marriage was apparently being served up as the main course. The scene that greeted me was straight out of a romantic movie, the kind I used to watch with Marcus during our early dating days. Candles flickered on my grandmother's antique table. Wine glasses caught the light, half empty and lipstick stained. My good china, the set I'd registered for, the one we only used for special occasions, was arranged with care I hadn't seen since our anniversary 2 years ago. Marcus had his back to me, but I could see the way his shoulders relaxed in a way they never did when he was with me anymore. He was wearing the shirt I'd bought him for his birthday, the one he claimed was too fancy for everyday wear. Riley faced my direction, but she was so lost in whatever story she was telling that she didn't notice me standing there like a statue in the doorway. She looked beautiful. Of course she did. Riley had always been the pretty one, the one who could walk into a room and have every head turn. Tonight she was wearing a red dress that hugged her curves in all the right places, her dark hair falling in waves over her shoulders. She looked like she belonged in my dining room, sitting across from my husband, sharing jokes and intimate glances. She looked like she belonged in my life. And then I told him, she was saying, her voice warm with laughter. I said, "Marcus, you're terrible. But you should have seen his face." That's when it hit me. This wasn't their first dinner together. This wasn't some spontaneous moment of weakness, some terrible mistake that had spiraled out of control. This was comfortable. This was practiced. This was routine. My husband had been dating my sister, in my house, at my table, with my dishes. I watched them for what felt like hours but was probably only minutes. Watched the way Marcus leaned forward when she spoke, the way Riley touched his hand when she laughed, the way they moved around each other like they'd been doing this dance for months. Maybe they had been. My phone buzzed in my purse, and I nearly jumped out of my skin. A text message from Marcus. "Hope you're having fun at the wedding, honey. Miss you. Love you." The audacity was breathtaking. I backed away from the dining room, my mind racing. Part of me wanted to march in there and confront them both, demand explanations, throw accusations, make them explain how they could do this to me, to us, to everything we'd built together. But another part of me, the part that had learned to survive Riley's manipulations over the years, whispered something else entirely. They didn't know I was here. They thought they were safe, hidden behind my absence and their careful planning. They thought they had time to figure out how to handle this, how to manage the fallout, how to control the narrative. They thought they held all the cards. I pulled out my phone and took a picture of the scene through the doorway. The intimate lighting, the cozy setup, the way they sat so close together. Then I took another, and another. My hands weren't shaking anymore. My heart had stopped racing. Instead, I felt something cold and calculating settling into my chest. Something that felt a lot like clarity. I had caught them red-handed. I had evidence. I had time they didn't know I had. And for the first time in months, maybe years, I felt like I had the upper hand. I slipped back out of the house the same way I'd come in, closing the door with the softest click. I sat in my car for a long moment, staring at the warm light spilling from my dining room windows, watching the shadows of my husband and my sister as they continued their romantic evening. My phone buzzed again. Another message from Marcus. Thinking of you. Can't wait until you get home tomorrow. I almost laughed. Almost. Instead, I started the engine and drove to the one place I knew I could think clearly. The one place where I could plan my next move without the weight of their betrayal crushing down on me. My lawyer's office was only 20 minutes away, and I had a feeling I was going to need her expertise sooner than I'd ever imagined. The next morning, I woke up in a hotel room that smelled like industrial carpet cleaner and regret. My phone showed 17 missed calls from Marcus, and 4 voicemails I couldn't bring myself to listen to. I already knew what they'd say. Variations of, "Where are you?" and "I'm worried," and "Call me back." Instead, I ordered room service and opened my laptop. If I was going to do this, I was going to do it right. The first thing I did was scroll through every social media account I had access to. Marcus had been careful, but not careful enough. There were patterns if you knew how to look. Photos where Riley appeared in the background of his work events. Check-ins at restaurants where they'd both been, just minutes apart. Comments on each other's posts that read like inside jokes. How had I missed this? How had I been so blind? But even as I asked myself the question, I knew the answer. I hadn't been blind. I'd been trusting. I'd been loyal. I'd been everything a wife was supposed to be, and they'd used that against me. The memories started flooding back then. All the little things that hadn't made sense at the time. The way Marcus had suddenly become interested in Riley's career problems. The way he'd started working late more often, especially on nights when Riley mentioned being free. The way my sister had started asking detailed questions about my schedule, my travel plans, my marriage. "I'm just worried about you," she'd said last month over coffee. "You and Marcus seem so distant lately. Are you sure everything's okay?" I'd actually thanked her for her concern. I'd opened up about our problems, shared my fears that we were drifting apart. I'd asked for her advice on how to reconnect with my husband, and all the while, she'd been sleeping with him. My phone rang. Marcus again. This time, I answered. "Thank God," he said, his voice tight with what sounded like genuine panic. "I've been calling you all night. Where are you? I thought you were supposed to be back this morning." "The wedding was postponed," I said, keeping my voice steady. "Food poisoning. I'm staying an extra day to help clean up." "Oh." There was a pause. "Are you okay? You sound different." Different. If only he knew how different I felt. How completely, fundamentally changed I was from the woman who'd kissed him goodbye 2 days ago. "I'm fine," I lied. "Just tired. It's been a long few days." "I miss you," he said, and I had to grip the phone tighter to keep from laughing. "I can't wait until you get home. I have a surprise for you." "A surprise?" "I made dinner reservations at that place you like. I thought we could talk about things. About us." Of course he did. He probably wanted to ease his guilt by taking me out for a nice dinner before he dropped whatever bomb he and Riley had cooked up. Maybe they'd decided to come clean. Maybe they'd figured out how to spin this so it was somehow my fault for not being a good enough wife, a good enough sister. "That sounds nice," I said, and meant it in the most twisted way possible. "I love you. You know that, right?" The words hit me like a physical blow. 3 months ago, I would have melted. 3 months ago, I would have said it back without hesitation. 3 months ago, I was a different person. "I know," I said instead. After I hung up, I sat in the silence of the hotel room and let myself feel everything I'd been holding back. The anger was there, hot and immediate, but underneath it was something worse. A deep, aching sadness that felt like it might swallow me whole. This wasn't just about adultery. This wasn't just about a cheating husband. This was about family. This was about the 2 people I'd trusted most in the world deciding that I was expendable. Riley had been my maid of honor. She'd stood next to me at my wedding, promising to support my marriage, to be there for me through everything. She'd helped me pick out my dress, held my flowers, given a speech about how much she loved seeing me happy. And Marcus had been my partner for 7 years. We'd built a life together. We'd talked about children, about growing old together, about the dreams we'd share. He'd held me when I cried about my father's death. He'd been my rock through every major life change. Now, I was just another obstacle between them and whatever they thought they wanted. I spent the day researching. I called my lawyer, Sandra, a bulldog of a woman who'd handled my father's estate, and set up an appointment. I took screenshots of everything I could find. I made lists of joint assets, joint debts, joint everything that would need to be divided. And I planned. By evening, I had a strategy. It wasn't about revenge, not really. It was about justice. It was about making sure that if they wanted to destroy what we'd built together, they'd have to face the consequences of that choice. I drove home as the sun was setting, my heart steady in my chest. I'd sent Marcus a text saying I'd decided to come home early, that I'd missed him too much to stay away another night. He'd responded with heart emojis and promises about our dinner reservation. The house looked normal from the outside. Our home, the one we'd bought together, the one we'd painted and furnished and filled with memories. I wondered if they'd made new memories here while I was gone. I wondered if they'd laughed about how easy it had been to fool me. I wondered if they'd already started planning how to tell me. Marcus's car was in the driveway. The lights were on in the kitchen. Everything looked exactly as it should, as if nothing had changed. But everything had changed. I had changed. I walked up to my own front door and knocked. The look on Marcus's face when he opened the door was worth everything I'd been through in the past 24 hours. Pure, unadulterated shock, followed immediately by panic, followed by what I can only describe as the expression of a man trying to figure out how much trouble he was in. "Surprise," I said, forcing a smile that felt like it might crack my face in half. You're home," he stammered, and I noticed he was blocking the doorway with his body. "I thought you weren't coming back until tomorrow." "I missed you too much," I said, echoing his own words back to him. "Aren't you going to let me in? It's my house, too." He stepped aside, and I walked into the foyer that had felt like foreign territory just yesterday. Everything looked normal. The dining room showed no signs of the romantic dinner I'd witnessed. The candles were gone, the good china put away, the evidence of their betrayal erased as if it had never happened. But I knew better now. I knew what they were capable of. "How was the wedding?" Marcus asked, his voice too bright, too casual. "It was postponed," I said, setting down my suitcase. "I told you that on the phone. Remember?" Right, of course. The food poisoning." He was sweating now, just slightly, and I wondered if he was thinking about Riley, wondering if she'd gotten the warning text in time to make her escape. "Where's Riley?" I asked, as if the question had just occurred to me. "I should call her, let her know I'm back. I know she was worried about me traveling alone." The panic in his eyes was almost comical. I don't know where she is. We haven't talked." "Really? That's strange. She usually checks in with you when I'm out of town. You know, asking if you need anything, if you're eating properly." I tilted my head, studying his face. "She's always been such a caring sister-in-law." "Yeah," he said weakly. She's great." I walked past him into the living room, noting the wine glass in the sink, the second wine glass hastily hidden behind the coffee maker. Poor Marcus. He'd tried to clean up, but he'd missed the important details. He'd always been careless that way. "I have something to tell you," he said suddenly, and I turned to face him. Here it comes, I thought. The confession. The carefully rehearsed speech about how sorry he was, how it just happened, how he never meant for it to go this far. "Oh, I've been thinking about us, about our marriage, about what's been missing." What's been missing? I kept my voice neutral, interested. Connection, intimacy, the spark we used to have. He was warming to his theme now, probably using words he'd practiced in front of a mirror. "I think we've grown apart, and I want to fix that. I want to fight for us." The audacity was breathtaking. He was sitting there, in the home where he'd been entertaining my sister, telling me that our marriage was missing intimacy. He was looking me in the eye and lying with such conviction that I almost admired him for it. Almost. "I want to fight for us, too," I said, and meant it in ways he couldn't possibly understand. That night, I lay in bed next to my husband and listened to him sleep. He'd been extra attentive all evening, bringing me wine, asking about my trip, complimenting my hair. He'd been the perfect husband, the man I'd fallen in love with 7 years ago. It was all performance, of course. Every kiss, every touch, every "I love you" was just another lie in a web of deception that probably went back months. But I played along, smiled and laughed and pretended to be the naive wife who suspected nothing. Because I had work to do. The next morning, after Marcus left for his office, I started phase 1 of my plan. I called Sandra and moved up our appointment. I called my bank and requested detailed statements for all our accounts. I called a private investigator that Sandra had recommended and set up a consultation. Then I called Riley. "Hey, sister," she said, her voice bright and cheerful. "I heard you were back early. How was Denver?" "It was enlightening," I said. "Listen, I was wondering if you wanted to grab lunch today. I have so much to tell you." "Oh, I'd love to, but I'm swamped with work." "Rain check?" "Of course. Maybe dinner instead? I was thinking we could go to that new Italian place downtown. You know, the one you mentioned last week." There was a pause. I don't remember mentioning an Italian place." "Really? Maybe I'm thinking of someone else. You know how it is when you travel. Everything gets jumbled together." "Yeah," she said, but her voice had changed, become cautious. "Maybe we should just plan something for next week, when things are less crazy." "Sure," I said. "But Riley, I'm really glad we're sisters. I'm glad I can always count on you to be honest with me." Another pause. "Of course. Always." After I hung up, I sat in my kitchen and felt something that had been broken inside me start to heal. Not because the betrayal hurt less, but because I finally had a purpose. I finally had a plan. They thought they were so clever, so careful. They thought they'd covered their tracks, managed their secret, controlled the situation. They thought I was still the trusting wife, the gullible sister, the woman who would accept whatever story they decided to tell. They had no idea what was coming. I opened my laptop and started typing. Email to Sandra. "I need to discuss asset protection and divorce strategy. Urgent." Email to the private investigator. "I need surveillance and documentation. Budget is not a concern." Email to my accountant. "I need to understand all our financial entanglements. Please prepare a comprehensive report." Then I opened a new document and began writing down everything I knew, everything I'd observed, everything I could prove. Names, dates, locations, photographs, phone records, social media evidence. I was building a case, not just for divorce court, but for the court of public opinion, for family, for friends, for everyone who would inevitably be forced to choose sides. By the time I was done, there wouldn't be any question about who was the victim here. The dinner reservation was at Romano's, the upscale Italian restaurant where Marcus had proposed to me 6 years ago. I almost appreciated the irony. If he was going to destroy our marriage, at least he was doing it with style. I spent extra time getting ready that night, choosing the black dress that had always been his favorite, the one he'd bought me for our anniversary. I wanted to look perfect when his world came crashing down. Marcus was already seated when I arrived, looking handsome and nervous in his good suit. He stood when he saw me, kissed my cheek, pulled out my chair like the gentleman he'd trained himself to be. The perfect husband, right up until the end. "You look beautiful," he said, and I could hear the guilt in his voice. "Thank you. You look pretty good yourself." I settled into my chair and accepted the glass of wine he'd already ordered for me. "So, what's this surprise you mentioned?" He shifted uncomfortably. "I wanted to wait until after dinner. I thought we should talk first." "Talk about what?" "About us. About where we are. About what we want." I sipped my wine and studied his face. He was working up to something, building his courage. I wondered if Riley was somewhere nearby, waiting for a text that would tell her how it had gone. I wondered if they'd already planned their next move. "I've been doing some thinking, too," I said, "about what's been missing from our marriage." "Oh? Communication, honesty, trust." I set down my wine glass. "The foundation of any good relationship." "Yes," he said eagerly. "Exactly. I think we've lost sight of those things." "I think one of us has." He paused, studying my face. "What do you mean?" I mean, I think one of us has been lying. The color drained from his face. Lying about what? About where they've been. About who they've been with. About what they've been doing. I leaned forward. About who they've been sleeping with. His mouth opened and closed like a fish. I don't know what you're talking about. Denver was very educational, I said conversationally. Did you know that hotel security cameras can capture images from quite a distance, even through dining room windows? His face went white. Listen, I can explain. Can you? Because I'm really curious how you're going to explain the romantic dinner you had with my sister in our house while I was supposed to be out of town. I pulled out my phone and showed him one of the photos I'd taken. This should be interesting. The silence stretched between us like a chasm. Around us, the restaurant continued its normal rhythm. Couples laughing, families chatting, the clinking of silverware on plates. But at our table, the world had stopped. How long? I asked quietly. It's not what you think. How long, Marcus? He closed his eyes. 6 months. 6 months. Half a year of lies, of careful planning, of treating me like a fool. Half a year of family dinners where they'd sat across from me, of holidays where they'd exchanged meaningful glances, of conversations where they'd discussed their secret while I remained oblivious. I want a divorce, I said. Please, let me explain. It wasn't supposed to happen. We never meant for it to… Stop. I held up my hand. I don't want to hear about how it wasn't supposed to happen. I don't want to hear about how you never meant for it to happen. I want to hear about how you're going to make this right. Make it right? You're going to call your lawyer tomorrow and file for divorce. You're going to agree to my terms without argument. You're going to sign whatever papers I put in front of you. What terms? I smiled, and it felt like the first genuine smile I'd managed in days. I keep the house. I keep my retirement accounts. I keep my car. You get to keep your guilt and your debt. That's not fair. Fair? I laughed, and several people at nearby tables turned to look. You want to talk about fair? Let's talk about fair. Let's talk about how fair it was for you to sleep with my sister. Let's talk about how fair it was for you to plan romantic dinners in my house while I was away. Let's talk about how fair it was for both of you to lie to my face for 6 months. Keep your voice down, he hissed. Why? Embarrassed? Worried about what people might think? I pulled out my phone again. Because I have about 200 contacts in here who would be very interested to hear about your affair, starting with your boss. His face went from white to gray. You wouldn't. Try me. What about Riley? What about your family? What about them? They made their choice. Now they get to live with the consequences. I stood up, leaving my wine untouched and my dinner untasted. I'll be staying at a hotel tonight. I'll come by tomorrow to get my things. I suggest you use the time to figure out how you're going to tell everyone what you've done. Wait, he said, grabbing my arm. Please, we can work this out. We can go to counseling. We can… No, I said, pulling away from him. We can't. Because you didn't just cheat on me, Marcus. You didn't just break our marriage vows. You destroyed my ability to trust you. You destroyed my ability to believe anything you say. You destroyed us. I walked out of Romano's with my head held high, leaving him sitting alone at the table where he'd once promised to love me forever. The valet brought my car, and I drove away without looking back. My phone started ringing immediately. Marcus, Riley, Marcus again. I let them all go to voicemail. I had phone calls to make, but they weren't to my cheating husband or my treacherous sister. They were to my lawyer, my accountant, my family, my friends. They were to everyone who needed to know that I was done being the victim in this story. I was ready to start being the author of my own ending. 3 months later, I was sitting in my newly redecorated living room, signing the final divorce papers that would officially end my marriage to Marcus. Sandra sat across from me, her expression satisfied in the way of lawyers who've won decisive victories. He agreed to everything, she said, sliding the documents across my coffee table. The house, the retirement accounts, the car, even the alimony waiver. I wasn't surprised. Marcus had learned what it meant to have his dirty laundry aired in public. His boss had not been amused by the affair, particularly when it became clear that Marcus had been using company resources to wine and dine my sister. His family had been horrified when they learned the truth. His friends had started treating him like a pariah. Apparently, there were consequences to betraying the people who trusted you most. "What about Riley?" Sandra asked. I smiled. Riley's discovering that actions have consequences too. My sister had lost her job at the marketing firm where she'd worked for 5 years. It seemed that when your personal life becomes a public spectacle, and when that spectacle involves cheating with your sister's husband, employers start questioning your judgment and character. She'd also lost her apartment, the one she'd been sharing with a roommate who decided she didn't want to live with someone who could betray family. Last I heard, she was living with Marcus in his new studio apartment across town. They'd gotten what they wanted, each other. They'd just discovered that getting what you want sometimes comes with a price you didn't expect to pay. "Any regrets?" Sandra asked. I considered the question. Did I regret the marriage? The 7 years I'd spent building a life with someone who'd turned out to be a stranger? The family relationships that had been destroyed? The trust that had been shattered? No, I said finally. I regret that it happened. I regret that they chose to hurt me. But I don't regret how I handled it. Because I had handled it. I'd taken control of my own story instead of letting them write it for me. I'd refused to be the victim, the wronged wife, the naive sister who'd been too trusting for her own good. I'd been strategic. I'd been smart. I'd been ruthless when ruthlessness was required. And I'd won. My phone buzzed with a text from my best friend Sarah. "Drinks tonight? I want to hear about your date with the lawyer." I laughed and typed back, "It wasn't a date. It was a business meeting." "Whatever you say, but he's cute, and he's obviously interested." She wasn't wrong. David, the partner at Sandra's firm who'd handled some of the more complex aspects of my divorce, had asked me to dinner twice in the past month. Both times I'd said no, not because I wasn't interested, but because I wasn't ready. But maybe I was getting closer to ready. Maybe I was finally healing from the betrayal, finally learning to trust my own judgment again. My house felt different now. It was mine, completely mine. From the mortgage to the mortgage payments to the decisions about what color to paint the walls. I'd changed everything that reminded me of Marcus, kept everything that felt like me. The dining room had been completely redone. New table, new chairs, new dishes. The room where Marcus and Riley had shared their secret romantic dinners was now my home office, filled with my books and my computer and my plants. I'd taken back my space. I'd taken back my life. There was a knock at my door, and I opened it to find a delivery man holding a massive bouquet of flowers. "For you," he said, checking his clipboard. "From a David Chen?" I accepted the flowers, smiling despite myself. The card read, "Third time's the charm? Dinner Friday? David." I looked at the flowers, then at my newly decorated living room, then at the divorce papers still sitting on my coffee table. 6 months ago, I'd been married to a man who'd been cheating on me with my sister. 6 months ago, I'd been living a lie, trusting people who'd been betraying me, building a life on a foundation of deception. Now I was free. I was strong. I was in control of my own story. I picked up my phone and typed, "Yes to dinner, but I picked the restaurant." His response came back immediately. "Deal. Looking forward to it." I set down the phone and looked around my house, my sanctuary, my refuge, my fresh start. Marcus and Riley had taken a lot from me. They'd taken my marriage, my trust, my sense of security. They'd taken my faith in family, my belief in loyalty, my confidence in my own judgment. But they hadn't taken everything. They hadn't taken my strength, my intelligence, my ability to rebuild. Most importantly, they hadn't taken my future. And that future was looking brighter every day.